Hello everybody and welcome to the Money Man. Now this is going to be the first video in a new series called Unissued Currency. That's right, I'm going to feature banknotes that were never actually put into general circulation. And I'm also going to let you know whether you can actually get hold of them, because in some cases you can still get uncirculated versions of banknotes that were never issued or put into general circulation. Now you're probably thinking, how on earth is that possible? Well, it depends on the individual banknotes. So I will tell you where possible, depending on which banknote I feature, whether you can actually get hold of them or not. So I think this is going to be a really interesting area for us to explore together. So the first banknote that I'm going to feature today is basically one banknote split into two, and it was produced by the Bank of England for the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and it is the 10 shillings or 50 new pence banknotes. Okay, and like I said, this is one banknote split into two, and I'll elaborate on that a little bit later. So here is the first one. This is the 10 shillings banknote. Now, this was supposed to be the first of a new series of banknotes that was supposed to be rolled out towards the end of the 1960s. However, Britain went through some significant changes regarding its currency in the 1960s, which meant that this banknote was never actually put into circulation. And again, I'll elaborate on that a little bit more later. First, I want to cover some core design features of this incredible banknote, because it is quite unique in terms of its design for the time. Now, you can see we've got the portrait of Queen Elizabeth II in her younger years, just to the right of the center of the banknote. Now, I'll talk about that image, that portrait of her, in a moment. However, I want to focus on some core features of this banknote. Now, if you look in the center here, you can see that we've actually got what looks like 3 flowers. Now, there are actually 4 because there's a small one here. And what you've got in the middle, you've got the red rose of England, you've got the thistle of Scotland, you've got the daffodil of Wales, and you've got the shamrock, which represents Northern Ireland. So you've got the 4 countries that make up the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. You've got those 4 symbolic flowers represented in this banknote, and they actually influence the colour scheme. So you can actually see that down the centre we do sort of have a red, and then we have this sort of like pinky purplish colour, that is basically influenced by the colour of the thistle. You have the yellow of the daffodil, and then we do get a slight touch of green just down here at the bottom, which is influenced by the shamrock. So you've got the colours of those flowers that sort of bleed or blend in to make the colour scheme of this banknote, which I think is a really nice detail. And you can see that we've got Britannia here. Britannia is a cultural, historical symbol of Britain and British identity. She also makes up the logo of the Bank of England. So she's sort of there in a sort of like a fixed seal, which is really, really nice. Now, there is no discernible watermark on this banknote, probably because of its low value. You've got to remember that this would have been probably the lowest denomination in this new banknote series that they were conceiving at the time. You can see it's represented with 10 shillings both in the bottom left and in the top right, and we've got this wonderful pattern that's very typical of the time moving through the banknote. Now let's have a look at the depiction of Queen Elizabeth II, because this one is quite unique. Now, she is wearing the hat and robes of the Order of the Garter, and that's quite unusual because she isn't often depicted in this royal ceremonial uniform on the front of banknotes. So this is why I think this one is pretty unique. Now, I'll show you a more contemporary image of Queen Elizabeth II wearing those robes and said hat. And here it is. So you can see that actually the colour scheme of the robes also influence the colour scheme of the banknote. Okay? So really, really interesting, quite different, and I think it's a great shame that this banknote never reached it into circulation, because it is quite a unique design. Now, let's have a look at the reverse of this 10 shillings. So here we go. Now, you can see the pattern is quite simple, as were many of the banknotes produced by the Bank of England of that time, but wonderful patterns moving through it. And again, we've got an excellent portrait of Sir Walter Raleigh. Now, Walter Raleigh was basically a courtier, he was a spy, he was a poet, a writer, an explorer, a soldier, And this guy did many things. He's a very distinguished character from British English history, and rightly revered in British history. So he did a lot of exploration, especially around South and Central America, and you can see that that is represented with this very large ship right here. I'm not quite sure what class of ship that is, a ship of the line or something like that, but you can see that there are many cannons on it, so it is a well armed ship, probably the height of military technology at the time when it was set to sea. And the interesting thing is that you've got this sun here. Now, this is interesting. I'm not quite sure what it's supposed to symbolize, but there is a famous saying. And the famous saying is this: the sun never set on the British Empire. And the reason for that saying is that when the British Empire was at its height, it covered such a vast area of the world's surface that somewhere in the world at any time the sun would have been shining over British Empire land. So that's where that saying comes from, and I wonder if that is what is symbolized here, because it's next to a naval vessel, and that was the epitome of British power through the 18th century, 19th century, all the way up to the early 20th century as well. That is how Britain's empire was forged, its dominance of the high seas and its fantastic navy. So you've got homage to Sir Walter Raleigh, but you've also got that homage to the British Empire, I believe. That is my interpretation of it. I could be wrong, but again, I think that's what's going on here. So really interesting banknote, absolutely exquisite. Now, why did it not go into circulation? Well, during the 1960s, Britain basically decided to change its currency system. We used to have pounds, shillings, and pence. However, what they decided to do was decimalize the currency, and what that means is they decided to just make £1 the equivalent to 100 pence, and that's it. Get rid of the shillings. The shillings became completely redundant. If you look at British currency before the 1960s, before decimalisation, it's a really confusing world, especially with the coinage, because you have like half crowns, you have pennies, you have shillings, you have pounds, you have threepence, you have all these different names for different coins, and it's just a bewildering world, especially for people like me who were born after the 60s. So what they did is they completely overhauled the currency and simplified it. So shillings became redundant, therefore this banknote became redundant. However, that was not the end of its life. They did convert it into new pence. So let's have a look at its new pence equivalent. Here it is. So you can see the core elements of the banknote are exactly the same, but what they've done is they've changed the denomination to represent the post-decimalisation form of the currency, 50 new pence. And it's new pence because it's changed from the old system to the new decimalised system. So that is why we call it the new pence, and the new pence is still used right up until this day in Britain. Okay, so as you can see, this one has got a different serial number, and it seems that a much larger quantity, many more banknotes were actually printed for this series. However, they were not used. They were never put into circulation. So this banknote went through 2 different life cycles, and still it didn't get introduced. Now, why not? Well, the reason is because the Bank of England decided to change it into a coin. So this banknote was abandoned, and the 50 pence piece was introduced as a coin. And that's it. That is why this wonderful, exquisite, beautifully designed banknote has now been confined to the annals of history. Now, can you get hold of this? Well, I've tried my best to find as much information about this banknote as I can, and it's really difficult. I think almost all of them were destroyed. Maybe some examples survive. I do know that the Bank of England Museum does have exhibition pieces of this banknote. However, given the fact that it never even got anywhere near circulation, I think the vast majority of them were probably destroyed, which is very sad. It would be amazing to get hold of this. I've never seen it in a private collection. I didn't even know this banknote existed until 5 days ago. I'd never even come across it. I tried contacting some family back home and said, do you guys remember this 50p banknote? Did they ever advertise it in the UK? Everybody's like, nope, never seen that in my life. That's weird. That's not a real banknote. So yeah, it was never even unveiled to the public, to my knowledge. If you have more information, if you know of any sources of this banknote, please let me know down in the comments section, because I, for one, would be very excited to get hold of this, if it is possible. But I think it's going to be pretty expensive. So let me know what you think. I think this is a fascinating banknote and a fascinating story to go behind it as well. So this is what I'm going to be doing from now on. I will be continuing to do my normal videos. But this is just an extra series that I will continue to produce as we go on, because I want to diversify my content as much as possible and try and keep it as fresh and interesting as possible. So if you have any suggestions of banknotes that you know were never issued into general circulation, put them down in the comments section, and it's more than likely that I will produce an in-depth study of those banknotes and feature them in videos for you in the future. So what do you think about this new series? I'm really excited for this one. I think it's going to be really, really good. So thank you so much for watching. Get those comments down in the comment section. Do you like this new series? Does this fascinate you? Because for me, it's so fascinating. I'm learning so much just off this first video alone, and I've got quite a few things in the pipeline. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. You can find me on Facebook, and soon, very soon, you'll be able to find me on Instagram. I have actually set up an Instagram account. I'm trying to populate it with enough photos to make it interesting. However, I'm struggling with getting the photos on there. I'm having some problems. But once I solve that, I will let you guys know, and you can find me on Instagram as well. Thank you so much for watching this video. It's the Money Man signing out for now. Bye-bye.